Cybercriminals are using social engineering loaded with urgency and fear to successfully prey on victims, your employees, or your customers. Protect your Office 365 email from today's most sophisticated attacks with Barracuda Email Threat Scanner. It's a free tool to help protect your business from these hard-to-detect attacks. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner uses artificial intelligence to hunt and eliminate Office 365 email threats. Find the cybersecurity threats hiding in your Office 365 email right now. Get your free email threat scan at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. When it comes to web app and API security, the choice is simple. You can choose Fastly's security solution that teams will actually use in full blocking mode, just like 90% of their customers. Or you can stick with costly options that you probably just turn off. You can get Fastly's all-in-one platform that protects apps everywhere they live, however they're built. Or departments can agree to disagree. You can go to securityweekly.com/Fastly to learn more. Or you can just wish you had. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Very happy to announce that we'll be at InfoSec World 2021 in person on November 25th through the 27th. This year, of course, it's a very special event as the InfoSec World organization and Security Weekly are both under the Cyber Risk Alliance umbrella. That means Security Weekly listeners and InfoSec World attendees get to see and hear from many of us at Security Weekly, and you save 20% off your World Pass. You can visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2021 to register using our discount code. On to the security news. Where do we start this week?
Well, we have a lot of overlapping stories, but did you catch the announcement this morning?
Which
Windows
one?
11?
Which one? Oh,
Which
Windows
one?
11. Yeah.
Shockingly, it will be a free upgrade for current Windows 10 users.
Interesting. The only things that I heard, Lee, was that the presentation started 10 minutes late because of technical difficulties. The demo went horribly wrong, and from what I understand, they used a pre-recorded video that was like shot on a potato, so it was pretty shaky and not great. And so let's put it this way, in comparison to what like an Apple keynote would be, it was, I would say I would say you couldn't polish a turd, but it was just the turd. It was completely unpolished. That was the feeling that I got from some of the stuff that I read.
A blue screen of death was the reason why it was delayed.
Way to come in not like a lion. I mean, that's pretty lame.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. I did not see it, so I cannot confirm.
From what I've gathered, I don't know how security related this is, right? But that Microsoft kind of wasn't thrilled about releasing a new operating system. I think they would have much rather gone in different directions with the company, but the customers made them force their hand, so to speak, that we like Windows, we use Windows, therefore we need a new Windows. I think some folks at Microsoft have different plans and a different vision for how the kind of next iteration of Microsoft should be. I think they're all in on Azure, and would have there was some indications that they would be going to like an all cloud-based computer, that there would be no operating system, that it would just give you access to the cloud kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like on with similar like a Chromebook
like
type
Chromebook,
of style,
but in a Microsoft style. And I think even pushing the envelope further past what a Chromebook is.
Yeah.
Right.
It does beg the question: shouldn't an operating system get to the point where it's just done?
Yeah, and you don't need or it's so far removed and under the covers for the general users that it doesn't matter as much, right? It's an appliance.
Right.
Weren't they saying not that long ago that when Windows 10 was going to be it? In other words, they were just going to continue updating Windows 10 off into the sunset. They weren't coming up with a new version?
Yep. Not anymore.
Damn it.
Well, at least they didn't give it some absurd name like Windows 98, which they released in 2000. No.
Windows ME?
95, 98.
Yeah, my favorite, Windows CE. Because what did you abbreviate Windows NT as? WinNT. And what did you abbreviate Windows 98 as? Win98. And Windows CE, what did you abbreviate that as?
Wince.
Wince. Yep. Because that's what it made you do.
Well, they are being coy on when it will be released. If they want to keep to a timing schedule, they got about 90 years, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, all good product managers know the old adage of it's on the roadmap.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
That's if you're a product manager, that's your go-to.
Under promise and over deliver.
Yep.
It's scheduled for the next version. When that next version will be, who knows?
John McAfee has passed away.
Yeah.
According to news reports, he has committed suicide in his prison cell. Some headlines read he was found dead in his prison cell.
Yep.
It's tough to kind of get any real facts out of that as to exactly what happened. I think it was Johnny was telling me there was a tweet from him in 2020 that he said, I would never take my own life kind of thing.
Yeah, and even like, fairly recently and some of those types of things. And they were clearly, I don't know what the timeline was, but even while he was in prison, he was quote tweeting. So someone had control of his account. And I'm speculating here because I didn't actually see them.
Right.
That very similar types of things. I would never take my own life.
Some are speculating like, well, the government finally got. I think that's in the article I quoted. They're like it is not in the quote that I put in our show notes, but in that article, some were commenting that the government, his attorney said that the U.S. government was out to get him, and they finally got him. It was his kind of quote in there. I'm like,
isn't speculation just another way of saying FUD?
FUD. Yeah. Or just
maybe
it's another way of saying
maybe we should try to avoid it.
Yeah, like making shit up. So I guess I'm pointing out, Jeff, that
there's lots of FUD.
There's lots of FUD. These are the types of FUD that people are saying, and you should not necessarily take this as actual fact. But this is what's being said.
There's lots of FUD. There's lots of jokes. There's lots of memes. It still doesn't change the fact that he was a pioneer in our industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Was an amazingly intelligent human being and changed the way we think about a lot of things.
When he interacted with us, he was a really nice guy.
Yeah.
He was, courteous enough to come on our show.
Yeah.
Share his thoughts and opinions. He was nice enough to shake my hand and meet me at DEF CON and say, hey, how you doing?
We may not have agreed with those opinions.
Sure.
We may not have agreed with his methodologies, but... It was his right.
I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but I did hear him speak once, and it was Jack Daniel was with me at the time, and he was telling me, "Oh, he's an amazing speaker. He's an amazing speaker," and it was a keynote at Rocky Mountain Information Security Conference. I think probably 5 years ago or so. I'm just trying to throw that out there to give him credit, but apparently he was not inebriated or chemically enhanced in any way, shape, or form, and it was one of the most boring, dry presentations any of us had ever heard. And Jack's like, "Wow, it really makes a difference when he's not having issues." So I have nothing to say about him other than condolences to family.
Right.
And that he was an amazing mind and did some great things for our industry. There's no word of a lie. I mean, didn't he invent antivirus? I mean, that was one of the claims that I heard in one of the articles, that he was one of the inventors. He may have been one of the early pioneers.
I would say early pioneers.
Pioneer.
He definitely left a mark and raised the bar from where we were. And, no matter how you attribute his behavior, he helped us advance substantially when it comes to anti-malware. And that's cool. I mean, the facts are, we know he's not alive anymore, and he was been in prison since October 3rd, and they were just about to extradite him. So the rest will reveal itself or not. Be interesting without him.
For sure.
Also, I mean, interesting to just look back on his life. So much has been, produced in terms of documentaries and written. Is just,
in some of the cases, he was a parody of himself. Like, just some of the amazing things that he said. Very polarizing. Very much speak his mind. Just amazing, hilarious.
So he's one of us, in other words.
Yeah. And I think Jack knew him pretty well. At certain conferences, I know they would hang out and stuff.
Right.
So,
Johnny had mentioned you guys interviewed him.
We did
back in 2015. Episode number? I will go back and watch it.
412. Johnny, 412.
Yeah.
I think it was 412.
I'll watch it right after I watch the paper chase.
412.
412. Okay. Cool.
April 12th, 2015. Thanks, Goose. April 10th, 2015. Thanks, Goose.
Okay.
Lee, you said we had some stories that overlapped.
So we both hit the. I think we both hit the funky SSID one.
Yep.
That was weird.
Yeah.
Well, weird in the sense that here we are in 2021 and
Format string attacks. Yay!
yeah, like a string.
Oh.
I don't know if was it a format. I don't know.
It was. Yep.
It was a
It's
format string attack. Yeah.
Yep.
In the SSID field, which, wow, input validation. In the SSID field, I thought we would have uncovered most of those by now. This was kind of like a more popular thing, I think, when Wi-Fi was first created, because essentially it's user input, right, that has to be interpreted by software. So,
Yeah. Something in the logging system just was parsing that string, and the only fix was to basically delete all your network preferences and then start collecting wireless networks again, which actually isn't a horrible idea, because I
thought you had to reset your phone. I thought you had to reset your phone entirely.
No, you only have to reset the networking preferences, but if you were to reset your phone entirely, it would fix it as well.
Okay.
But yeah, it's only the networking preferences.
Gotcha.
I hate to do it, but it's not a bad idea to wipe out those old networks. But
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Because that's the only way you can do it.
those who fiddle around with karma attacks.
Yep.
And that still works, right?
It does. It's getting better, but it's one of the things that we just recently added to the wireless course. But yeah, I mean, karma attacks work less and less because some of the vendors are fixing the problem and not doing lots of beacon or probe requests and so forth. However, if you observe a beacon in response to a probe request for all of one that you've connected to, you'll connect to it. So what do?
Yeah.
You just spam everybody with beacons of or probe responses of all of the popular network names. Yeah, a tool called Wi-Fi Fisher will do exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can do it just one.
Yep. ATT Wi-Fi. I mean,
yeah.
AKA I love my neighbors, right? Remember that?
Oh, sure do. Yep, but Wi-Fi Fisher maybe not necessarily intended for that purpose, but it certainly is great for doing exactly that. So, yeah.
So the other thing I thought was interesting was the Bash-based ransomware called DarkRadiation that targets Linux and Docker containers. And I thought of Paul when I read that one.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of basically it gets in there and does an RM minus RF Docker, but and so the bar isn't very high. But the fact that it works and that there are systems that can go after is kind of like, wait, this is a pretty low bar and it's still getting targets. What the hell? Come on, guys.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that it's written in Bash, right? It's kind of like the Linux equivalent of a PowerShell attack, right? Except Bash is pretty much almost always there on that system. PowerShell, you could, wager a bet as to whether or not it might be enabled or not. But Bash on a Linux system, good chances that script's going to run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to work. And now as we get more and more Linux-like stuff on Windows, it might work there too. Trend Micro did do a nice analysis of it, but like I said, I just thought it was really interesting that somebody pulled together an effective Bash ransomware in considering all the other tools we have these days.
Yeah,
and it doesn't do any obfuscation, I don't think either.
Yeah, it's ubiquitous. It's not a very well written Bash script. You can get even more creative with Bash, right?
Oh yeah, of course. But they didn't have to.
Yeah, because the advanced endpoint malware detection on Linux is not as advanced as it is on Windows.
That's right.
So attackers can be lazy and just use Bash.
Hey, use what works.
That's it. I did have my story number 2. Jeff, did you want to talk about homomorphic encryption?
Who does number 2 work for?
Maybe Lee can shed light on it.
I have number 6.
Is it also homomorphic encryption, or are you alternate? offering an alternative article.
No,
Crossover.
Yeah.
No, I think I was trying to transition. Sorry.
yeah, do homomorphic.
Come on, Jeff.
All right. I don't.
I thought you were a crippy. I thought you were a crippy.
I am a crippy. I don't get homomorphic encryption, and I read the whole article, and there's lots of math in it. I'm not a mathematician, and lots of hypotheses, and frankly, most of the article's about quantum cryptography.
Yeah, it is.
Frankly,
Yeah.
but then at the end of the article, the guy says, average people like you and me. I'm like, dude, you're not an average person.
No, not if you can write that article. Provided it's accurate, I can't speak to the validity of it.
Well, yeah, I just and you were asking before the show, or commenting before the show. You're not sure what the purpose is, and I certainly don't have a better clue of what the purpose. And they described how it could be used, homomorphic encryption. I just don't get it. We need to
Did
call
you
it.
just say this is a problem looking for a solution? I mean, a solution looking for a problem?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it does have use cases, but the use case was you want a computer system and or software to be able to analyze data, but not read that data in plain text. So you're analyzing and performing operations on it on the ciphertext. And I believe from reading the article, and listeners, by all means, weigh in if you know this stuff really well, that you have to encrypt it in a certain way such that the homomorphic algorithms are in effect on the data that you've just encrypted, such that a system can analyze the data even though it's encrypted and derive some result, pass that same encrypted data back to the end user, and they can still decrypt it as they normally would. But it sounds like the analysis process doesn't modify the encrypted data, but merely performs operations on it, analytics on it.
You got more out of the article than I did, and the way you're describing it makes it. I mean, I read that, and I that's not how I interpret it, but I think you might be right. And I think what it essentially is that they're adding additional functions or tags, if you will, and that they can track, and the tags are somewhat related. And maybe I'm over simplifying that, but it's almost like it's a hash of the data, and they can make use of the hash of the data without revealing the underlying data. Right. I mean, I'm all about simplifying it, but it's all speculation, and you know what I said about speculation.
Right.
Well, an interesting thing there is one of the things that we're responding to on the cyber executive order, was it 14027 or 28? One of the questions they ask is, well, how many systems we have that have encrypted while in use, sensitive data encrypted while used? In other words, like this homomorphic encryption, you're using it without decrypting it, which is kind of a mind bender, but if you're comparing hashes and stuff, you're not decrypting it. It's kind of interesting. I don't know how useful that is, but it is interesting.
Well, and they also started the article with, talking about AI and ML, and
and that was kind of lost in the rest of the article.
It was even more confusing.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're going. I'm sure the guy that wrote this thing's brilliant, and maybe we should get him on the show.
Right.
And he could explain it to us.
Agreed.
Yeah.
What else do we want to talk about?
I like the story that you put in there to make Tyler feel better.
Yeah. What story number is that?
That is your story number 6.
So apparently there were 2 people in, what country was this
Africa.
In Africa. They were
South Africa.
I believe 2 males. One was 21 and one was 17.
Yep, 2 brothers.
And they somehow created this cryptocurrency kind of investment fund, if you will, and got like high profile people, according to the article, celebrities, to invest in this fund. And like what they made it sound like is like your average celebrity would invest hundreds of thousands of dollars as an investment. They would then go invested in cryptocurrency and had amassed a air quotes portfolio, right? Amassed 3.6 or 4 billion or 2 billion, depending on the day, of Bitcoin, value in Bitcoin. There was a footnote at the end of the article that said, yeah, by the time we published it, like it was 2 billion.
Yep.
Because we all know Bitcoin fluctuates, right?
That was one of the things that I thought was hilarious. Things that have vanished: 3.6 billion in Bitcoin, and then they say in the article 4 billion. At the end of it, they say 2.1. It's like,
yes.
While we were writing this article,
yes.
Which one of these brothers is the prince? That's what I want to know.
Oh,
I'm not
Amir.
sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
But what happened was, like, they told their customers or investors, I should say, that customers, investors, same difference, right? But that, hey, we got hacked. We don't know the details of the hack, but like we'll get back to you with some more information, and then went dark. Bam, just like that.
Nope,
disappeared.
63,000 Bitcoins are gone.
63,000 Bitcoins. Because I mean, you can disappear with.
It sounds very scammy to me.
Agreed.
If only Tom had stayed, he could tell us what law they were violating by stealing the investors' money.
Oh, that was Bernie Madoff, right? Is that essentially fraud? I'm going to say fraud. That's what I go back to, right? With PCI, it's 11.3. With law, it's fraud. Right?
Jeff, was he right?
Yes, he was right.
Okay.
It was fraud. No, I was trying to think of the term that they're always
embezzlement.
Yeah, I was thinking of the more generic term they use for organized crime, but
racketeering.
Racketeering. Yes,
sounds like a racketeering.
It's one of those.
Yep.
But I did put it there to make Tyler feel better because people lost a lot of money and there's 3.6
until you
billion.
find out that he resolved after he lost his memory stick that he was going to use a third party investment firm.
Yeah,
and somebody turned him on to this company AfriCrypt.
Right.
but you do realize that what's been interesting is that we made fun of Tyler so much that he couldn't find that drive, and he hasn't been here in a couple
and now
weeks.
he's not here, so maybe he did find it, and he's living on his own island somewhere with the AfriCrypt guys.
Maybe he's waiting for the value of his lost memory stick to go up again.
Maybe
it's only 500,000. It's not worth finding it, but it peaks 2 million again. I'm going for it.
I mean, can you cash out that much Bitcoin in one transaction? You can't just convert that. You could. I mean, you could pay taxes on it.
They're in Africa, so who knows?
No, in this case, no.
Yeah, they're in South Africa, but you could cash it out. You'd probably actually massively sway the market if you're going to do 63,000 Bitcoins, because of course now there's a supply of them, and the market might take a little tumble. You might not get what you expect.
Right.
But yeah, you could. I wouldn't. It might not be a good idea.
I was describing to someone the Craig Wright thing. We haven't talked about that in a while.
Yeah.
Because we knew him, and then there was speculation that he was one of the inventors of Bitcoin, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything in that whole
what was it?
saga recently.
I think Vice did a really great sort of roundup of sort of all of the shenanigans that went on with that, and
because we still haven't heard from Craig Wright.
I mean, we did, but not really. I mean, we did. He said, "Yep, here I'll prove it." Smoke and mirrors that weren't really. It was. But that was like the last thing. Those last communications. That exactly. In years, and he's kept a low profile since.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just find it interesting that people with all this Bitcoin kind of just disappear. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a conspiracy theorist.
Are you saying Bitcoin is unhealthy?
Yeah, because you wonder, Lee, is it the Russian mafia that's going after these people, or are they somehow figuring out that once you amass a certain amount of Bitcoin, that you can now have the means to just disappear?
Ooh, I like that. Right? I like that angle.
Right. Anyway.
Interesting.
It does make you wonder where Tyler is, though. Right?
It does, yeah. Because now he's not missing. He messes me right before the show. We have communications from Tyler.
Well, how do you know it was Thailand?
Right. Yes. If you have that much Bitcoin, can you hire someone to, assume your persona online and kind of keep things going?
You got a message from his account from his mobile device, probably, but who's on the back end?
Yeah.
I liked your one, Paul. The largest U.S. propane distributor discloses an 8-second data breach.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, it turns out it was just a prolonged fart.
Different kind of breach, Larry. Different kind of breach.
Yeah.
So they did. There was a data breach notification letter, and I thought it was, interesting that people involved with natural resources, similar to the Colonial Pipeline, also disclosing, breaches of some kind. This looked to me more like a data breach and less like a ransomware attack. But the 8-second breach made it kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's like Gone in 60 Seconds, the movie with Nicolas Cage.
This is like Gone in 8. The cyber equivalent of that is a movie called Gone in 8 Seconds.
Yep, 123 employee records were compromised in 8 seconds. Wow.
How do they know? I don't know.
Forensics, man.
The 8 seconds was kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, they obviously watched the timing of the SQL map command, right?
Yes.
Very good. Very good.
I thought that
Crazy.
Texas homeowners getting their thermostats, air quotes, hijacked by the power company was interesting. Apparently buried in the fine print of many Texas energy contracts are the words, "You agree to allow Energy Hub and your thermostat provider to remotely access your thermostat." And reportedly what's happening is they're remotely accessing people's thermostats because they have access and authority to do so. Going back to our previous segment, they have permission. And they're adjusting the temperatures to reduce their energy consumption to avoid overloading the grid.
They do that in Maryland, but it's an opt-in voluntary program.
Yep. I've worked with a number of energy providers that had a very similar opt-in type of program and tested a bunch of those types of programs. And this one is very interesting that it's not opt-in, and I'd argue it isn't even opt-out.
It is opt-in because you agreed to the terms of service.
Well, then that's not opt-in, because if you don't agree to the terms of service, they don't deliver your damn energy.
True.
Or you have to go with another provider.
So
and there might not be one.
Lee?
What I was hearing from when I can't remember who it was. I was talking to somebody from down in Texas last week while I was at Wild West. It wasn't just that they were adjusting their thermostat; they were turning their air conditioner off. And they couldn't turn it back on. And then they got out their EULA, and there it was that they could do it.
They turned it off, not just adjusted the temperature.
Yeah, so they were like without AC for days.
Wow.
It was not pleasant.
And not good for your cigars. That would be my primary concern, is that my cigars are getting really warm, and you can develop things like mold and things like that if your cigars get too warm, and tobacco beetles.
So the other thing is, back when we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, Pacific Gas and Electricity had a similar plan. It wasn't your thermostat. They put a device on your air conditioner to save money, not run it during peaks. I mean, they had a whole sales pitch on how cool it was. But bottom line, they could turn your AC off when they wanted to.
Yep. But you had to opt in.
You know what, Lee? That's not cool.
You had to opt in.
That's not. Well played. Well effing played.
Get that man another drink.
You might even argue it's kind of hot.
Yeah, all right. But now these are thermostats from your energy provider, right? This isn't like I've got a Nest or an Ecobee and I've installed it myself and they're hacking into my thermostat. This is I've got the thermostat from my energy company, right?
Did they say?
Because you have a choice as to what the thermostat is something the homeowner determines which model and is installed, right? So if they turned it off remotely, wouldn't you just go put a new thermostat in and we can go get one for $19.99 at Home Depot, a completely analog? Remember the old school analog ones? Yeah, you just go slap one of those in, no electronics in it whatsoever, and then it should work just fine. Unless, like you're saying, it was a device that was put in line in your system or whatever.
Yep. In this case, it was definitely, and they don't
In this
specify.
case, they say thermostat.
Yeah, they don't specify whether it was like Nest or Ecobee or something like that, or whether it was one from Energy Hub. But
just because the article says thermostat doesn't mean it was the thermostat.
That's true.
Right. True. But I knowing from my personal experience having a Nest, and there was some incentives 2 years ago, I think, from our local National Grid.
You could get the thermostat from them.
Or if you had one, you could allow National Grid like API access to your account, so that if you were being responsible and were potentially allowing them to adjust as well.
You get a credit.
You could get a pretty good credit. It was in $500 or $600 range, and it was only for like a 12-month period.
Yeah, and what happens when someone hacks that and then turns everyone's thermostats off?
They get hot.
They get hot or cold. Yeah.
No.
I think that, there's certainly more damage if it's turning the heat off in the winter.
Yep.
Because your pipes freeze and flooding and all that, and that was happening was it happening in Texas?
It was this winter, but it was and you say that in Texas this winter, it could have happened that they were managing people's energy because they had whole sorts of grid failure.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was just that the power was out that all those things happened. Period.
Right. I mean, certainly there's damage to the home. If it gets too hot, certainly.
Yep.
More humidity than heat that can, cause some damage
over extended periods of time. Lee, you had a comment in there.
Yeah, I was thinking I'm remembering more of the conversation, and part of it was there was some sort of a feedback loop on the thermostat. You would have to fake it out. Not that it's impossible. Remember, I was talking to a hacker, and a young one at that. So kudos there. But you couldn't just take it out or turn it off. You had to do something so they thought it was still in line.
Oh, interesting.
It's not impossible to solve.
Yeah, I don't like the utility company controlling the thermostat, controlling my home HVAC, right? I look at them as a utility provider of providing me with power and water.
I mean, that said, some incentives are potentially there.
And opt-in and incentives, I'm totally fine with.
For sure.
Yeah,
but without opt-in and no incentives to you, like, hey, let's it's hot out. Let's turn your air conditioner up a little bit. So instead of being 75, it's 78. And this month we'll give you 2 cents off your kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
I mean, opt in for something like that. That might make sense. So
yeah, but that that has also health it has health repercussions as well. I know.
Sure.
My dogs, for example, they're pugs. They do not do well in the heat. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we'd run our air conditioner for them during the day, because they would just die of heat exhaustion. So yeah, that's weird to me.
Very.
Also, someone can hack your Peloton bike. This sounded like it was physical access.
We covered that last
week.
Yes, it's
physical access.
You did cover that last week.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But no.
Oh, that explains it. Paul wasn't here last week.
And you know what? And you know what?
But it sounds like you guys had the same conclusion.
Yeah.
I was like, that's great. But like, if someone's in my home and it's access to my Peloton bike, I got different issues, right?
The other ones too that we were, because they were unlocking the Android bootloader and all sorts of other stuff. But the other one that we were speculating too, Paul, is that it may not just be Peloton for some of this exercise equipment. Like I know you have the mirror. Mirror.
I have a mirror and I have a treadmill that I can't remember the model, but it's totally an Android tablet that it has on it.
This may just not be a Peloton problem. That they targeted Peloton because they've been in the news recently and they're popular. So
it wouldn't surprise me if Mirror is also an Android device under the covers. Yeah.
What surprised me on the Peloton article is that you had to manually look on their site to see if there were updates for your Peloton. Considering everything else they're doing with automation and online, I was kind of like, say what? And apparently you use the USB port to install those updates while you're at it. Just it feels like a disconnect. But yeah.
One that I thought may fall in the same category, but it turns out it doesn't. 30 million Dell devices are at risk for a remote BIOS attack. And when I saw this, I'm like, how much do I want to bet that our friends at Eclipsium found this. Sure enough, it was them.
It's Eclipsium.
Nice.
Love you guys. You're awesome.
Yeah.
And gals. Awesome.
Yeah.
But so
I actually used the word Eclipsium in my third story. Yes, that's it.
right? So there were 2 sets of vulnerabilities. 3 of those vulnerabilities were like remote code execution, buffer overflow kind of stuff, right? But the one that gets you that is the SSL misconfiguration.
It's like a overly permissive certificate or something.
Yeah, no, it was so any wildcard certificate issued by any of the built-in certificate authorities contained within the BIOS Connect feature will satisfy the secure connection.
Oof.
So the BIOS has it hard-coded that it will use 8.8.8.8 to resolve something like support.dell.com. So I was kind of thinking, they didn't like go into like exactly how to pull this off, right? But probably on purpose. So like basically you've got a man in the middle of this device. And when you're man in the middle, you can manipulate DNS and respond, right? Because it's reaching out to 8.8 and I think it's a race condition if I respond sooner or DNS cache poison, right?
Or more importantly, what if you're on the network, you're on my network, and I route 8.8.8 to over
me
here.
Yeah, you're just going to middle that DNS connection.
You don't even need to do DNS.
Middle it,
you're gonna route 8.8.8 to this other network segment instead of out to the internet, and it come to my server.
Right.
Right.
And once you do that, then you have to present any wildcard certificate that is valid by that CA, and that's enough for it to trust you to get a firmware update, which then you use a remote code execution vulnerability, and there's 3 vulnerabilities to choose from to then get into the secure, into the BIOS basically, to be able to do nefarious things.
You suppose that BIOS trusts the Let's Encrypt CA?
Yeah, because it's all the CAs that were in from Mozilla's root certificate file.
Certdata.txt from Mozilla. So now all I need is a wildcard, but
those guys at RSA work so hard to develop the RSA algorithm, all just for like stuff like this to throw it all out the window.
Yeah.
Right?
Lee, you make that joke about Let's Encrypt, but I don't think Let's Encrypt does wildcard certs.
No, I don't think they do.
No,
but still, like cheap, relatively speaking, you can get a wildcard cert from any of the CAs for relatively short money. Yeah. And relatively, $500,000, $1,500.
The cool thing is that the researchers are going to talk about this at DEF CON this year, but that's still 2 months away.
Yeah, I know. I really want to see exactly how this attack is pulled off, because there's like a couple different,
just over a month away.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different paths you could go down to pull this off. Like, I want to see how they were kind of cagey about exactly how you pull this off, right? Whereas like Larry and I were just kind of postulating about like how
and of course
the best way to, I mean, there's lots of different ways you can manipulate this in this attack, and I'm sure, knowing the folks at Eclipsium, like they've tested these different methods and kind of perfected like, hey, once we're man in the middle, like we've got a script and it just works, right?
But of course, 'tis the season. DEF CON's coming, Black Hat's coming, so we got to tease all these things that we've been, and we're not going to give all the way the details. Come see our thing at Black Hat DEF CON. So tis the season. So I get it, and I get it.
It's cool,
right?
So, what else we got?
Well, I was going to ask
creepy COVID app.
Yes,
Lee or Jeff rather.
Sorry, Jeff Finley.
Well, I was curious why Paul had put the CVS story up, and I'd forgotten he wasn't around last week. So I was like reading the article, like, okay, what's new and different?
So yeah, sorry. You know what? I must have been just like instant or just habit rather collecting stories, forgetting that I wasn't on the show last week,
Gotcha.
and it just added into my collection.
Okay.
That's why I probably ended up with all those stories.
Same sort of thing when I'm not here for a week. I collect a bunch of stuff, and I usually like. If it was from last week, I just dump it because I know that it's probably going to be a dupe.
It was in the folder to get dumped in.
It happens.
Cookies are for sale.
Ooh, I like cookies.
Cookies are good.
Are they made with the real Girl Scouts?
No.
Oh.
I did have a cookie that was half chocolate chip cookie and half brownie.
A brookie?
Amazing.
A brookie.
Oh, is that what they call it?
Yep.
Oh, amazing. Anyway, so basically there are cookie stealing malware. Cookie stealing is built into malware, and rather than selling your credentials online, they're selling your cookie or your session, which can be replayed. I guess it's not. I guess it sounded more interesting than it really was. Kind of cool, but they're for sale on the dark web. I mean, why not?
But interesting because they're selling those cookies on the dark web. But we think about 2 weeks ago when it was last week when EA got compromised. It was through a leaked Slack cookie that was sold on the dark web.
Yeah.
I think they mentioned it in the article.
That's actually the Sans ICS article you cited points at that EA breach with that cookie.
Yep.
ISC, not ICS. Internet Storm Center.
Yeah, Xavier Mertens, who's awesome.
Yes.
Yep. Good stuff. So yeah, definitely some tie back to last week, Paul, but still interesting.
It kind of makes me want to automate the
stealing of cookies.
No, that, but for our own protection, destroying all of your sessions, right? Like there are certain. Is it Google that lets you do this? Maybe Amazon as well. Like you can go in and say, like, destroy all of my trusted devices and sessions, and basically, if any device has authenticated to Google via a device, and you're remembering that device and that session, basically make them all re-authenticate and do two-factor authentication. It makes me want to have more options to say, even though it's convenient, right, that you're logged into your Google account in 3 different systems, and then I don't have to keep entering my password, sacrificing some of that convenience to go, destroy all that stuff, just in case someone did steal your cookie, right?
So actually, along that line, I'm working on booking a trip in August, and when I was going into all my travel sites, whether through my phone or through the computer, all my logins had expired. I was kind of like, cool. I'm glad they didn't persist for 15 months while I wasn't using them.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of admittedly that varies, right? Some are 30 days, some are. That's policy.
Yep.
And a session token with a life is good.
Yep.
I know, Office 365, it's obviously configurable, right? And you can say how often. And I know users even myself, I kind of groan, oh crap, because now, I got Edge, and I have Chrome, and I have my email client, and I have Teams, and at least on Linux, Windows maybe is a better experience with this, maybe not. All my applications, I have to re-authenticate on all of them on all my devices, and I kind of groan about it. I'm like, no, security.
There's one email provider that I use that every 3 months or so, the access token that has been provided to my email client no longer functions. So you have to go back into the web version and re-authenticate the token.
Right. Shouldn't the session be tied to your IP address, though?
That would be even more of a pain in the ass for me. Speaking of which, I have Google Mail on my phone, and I didn't travel for 18 months, and all was hunky dory. And I go down the street to Home Depot a week ago, and my phone tries to check my email while I'm at Home Depot over cellular, and it says, "We blocked someone from logging into your account."
Oh, yeah, it gets really angry.
Oh, my God.
I know that sucks, but it's cool.
The worst part is, I turned that shit off.
Yeah.
And it's back on again.
Back on again.
Uncle Google knows better, Larry.
It does. Saving me from myself.
It's that whole usability versus security.
Yeah. And the worst part about that is when you go and review the logs, someone logged in because it came from the cellular network. It's an IPv6 address.
Yep.
And it says it came from the United States. That's fucking helpful. God damn it.
Well, it's not the Russians. Come on now.
But do I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plausible deniability.
How safe is our drinking supply, though?
Not
we talked about
Move on.
next story.
You and Larry got that.
No, seriously.
We talked about this a few weeks ago, right? But Brian Krebs read an article. There was some interesting things in this article. So he said the report makes there were different standards bodies that I didn't necessarily know existed, right?
Yeah.
The water ISAC?
Kind of, water ISAC, right?
There's not a standards body there, but they're the.
Is it a standards body or is it a
information
consortium or
that's
is
the
it
information sharing like Ren ISAC and
so it's an ISAC, information sharing
no
center.
USAC.
USAC, ISAC, we all sack
for ice cream. Wait,
but the
You sack, mister.
there's the EPA and then there's the Water Sector Coordinating Council. That was the other one.
What now?
He had to run a clarification. He said at 6:25 p.m. there was an update. Clarified that the report was issued by the Water Sector Coordinating Council.
The WISC. The WSCC.
WSCC.
Not water ISAC. Okay.
Yes. They did a report, and it must have been their report that said they're making the case for federal funding of state and local systems to provide cybersecurity training tools and services for those in charge of maintaining IT systems, noting that 38% of water systems allocate less than 1% of their annual budgets to cybersecurity, and the remaining are what, 2%? 3%? 4%? But they didn't say what the remaining ones were. So kind of some incomplete data there. But confirming many of our suspicions that water facilities, water treatment plants, right, which also provide the water as well as treat it, obviously, right? And they also talked about wastewater treatment plants were included in this as well.
Did they?
They're the same thing.
So no, they had 52,000 separate drinking water systems. They polled 600 employees of water and wastewater treatment facilities. Correct.
And so those are the same facilities? You mean the water I drink is processed in the same facility as my poo?
I was somewhat kidding, but I mean there are water treatment facilities that recycle the water into the
right.
Yep.
And so they can be the same.
Yep. The things that came out of that article that were kind of shocking.
I don't like to poo where I drink. Is that
don't shit
appropriate analogy?
The metrics that came out of that I thought were pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
But between IT and OT, so information technology versus operational, the ICS stuff, the operational technology stuff, roughly speaking, 35% of the utilities have identified their assets on their network.
Right.
And 22-ish% have or were working on identifying them, meaning that 45% have no fucking idea what's on their networks.
I'll buy that.
Mm-hmm. So half of the 52,000 water facilities don't know what's on their network. 26,000 water facilities spread across the country don't know what's on their network.
And but if you're small enough, so there's also part of this that said that tens of thousands serve fewer than 3,300 residents, and those utilities currently do not have to report to the EPA about their cybersecurity practices. So,
right.
It also sounds like the Environmental Protection Agency also maintains some level of compliance, and the compliance standard there is the Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. There's a link to it. I admittedly did not read it because it doesn't sound. Yep. I have to be in a certain mood to read the America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018.
Now, arguably, those systems that serve fewer than 3,300 residents probably aren't particularly connected. It's probably, hey, call up Dave, and he's got to go down there and turn that valve about 3 degrees. Well, sound like Dr. Doug.
But so one of the things I ran into is a friend of mine who's in a very small water district on the board. They were trying to hire a company to do some of the management, and the company they were looking at had a cloud solution. They were managing hundreds of small water companies, and the cybersecurity was pretty much smoke and mirrors on how they were protecting them from all kinds of stuff. It was really creepy, the lack of information. So you got, instead of you having these, 100 different organizations doing their thing and calling Bob and Jane down to go kick it when it breaks, they're doing that remotely from one common service that doesn't have terribly good tenant separation.
I was exactly where I was going, Lee.
Water management as a service.
What's the tenant separation? So if you got these smaller water facilities that are, like you said, Lee, going up to a centrally managed outsourced service, you pop the outsourced service, and then you gain access to all of those tenants. Then you can affect water for collectively what would be just under 3,300 residents, but then multiply that times 100.
Yep.
So I just sent my buddy the article.
Okay.
Nice. I followed the link, Paul, and opened up the actual
report.
What was that? The water,
the actual water, whatever it's called, the Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. It's it's one of these legal congressional documents. So it's column down the middle of print. So there's a lot of white space, but it's a 129-page document. I just did a word search on cyber. Guess how many times cyber shows up in the document?
3. None.
1.
2. Interesting.
Of course.
Which is enough that I can read both citations to you. So
let's see what cyber us, Jeff.
So whatever subsection, paragraph, blah, blah, blah. Strategies and resources to improve the resilience of the system, including the physical security and cybersecurity of the system. And that's part of an emergency response. I'm sorry, I should back up. The emergency response plan shall include what I just said. That's one entry. The other entry is Section 1113, Operation and Maintenance of Existing Infrastructure. The Secretary shall improve the reliability and operation and maintenance of existing infrastructure of the Corps of Engineers and, as necessary, improve its resilience to cyber-related threats.
So just like PCI.
It says a whole lot of nothing. No, that PCI doesn't.
So it says 11.3, right? Everyone's gonna do pen test.
Let me search 11.3 real quick. Only this time it's 11.13. Remind me to smack you the next time I see you, Paul.
Yes, I need it.
If he doesn't, I will.
Thanks. Just
smacking by proxy.
So nice that they cite that act in the article, but
I mean that's like you should do some cyber security things. It's basically what it's saying.
Yeah, no problem. 1% of my budget.
Right. Cool. Yes, that's how we ended up there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, but there's no regulation, compliance regulation for these water treatment plants and water facilities, and then you dump the Water Infrastructure Act on me, but I'm going to stand by my original statement. They're not doing it because they don't have to, and they're not doing it also because, and we discussed this when the water treatment facility, when was that, back in the fall? A lot of them are owned by small municipal governments, and they can't afford it. And
they haven't got their feet wet in cybersecurity, I guess.
Well, and if it's the water treatment plant, they're just doing a really shitty job.
You just flushed this episode down.
That's right. Well, I mean, right at this point, Jeff, it's water under the bridge.
We're going in the deep end.
All right, so we should tap into another story.
You know what's funny when we laugh at our own joke?
Down?
Man, this show's going down the drain.
Can we talk about the article I thought was interesting was the guy that reported the vulnerability to Apple. I think it was your story, Larry.
No, it's my. Well, I don't know if Larry had it.
I think we both had it. I didn't really get a chance to digest it nearly as much as I wish I could have.
So I read it twice. And I still
perfect. You're the expert.
No, I'm not, because I still can't fully digest it. There was gaps in my understanding of this article. Admittedly, I sent it to Tyler, and I'm like, "You're going to be on the show tonight to read this and explain this to us, right?" And then I sent it to everyone. I'm like, "Someone read this and explain it to me. First of all, amazing write-up, by the way. I mean, just the whole methodology. So essentially what this researcher found was, and it sounds like this is the same researcher that found some of the password reset issues in Instagram, and kind of applied that same logic to, what if I look at Microsoft or Apple or other large companies and how they do it, and kind of settled on Apple. And then said, what if I were able to perform a brute force attack against the code that Apple requires you to enter if you want to reset your password? And I guess some of what was missing for me is, like, I don't use Apple devices, so I'm not totally familiar with the whole process for password resetting as like first-hand experience, because I only do it occasionally when
it's
I do
a phone number and a code that they
send
to you somehow.
that they send to you, right?
But you can't read it because you're locked out of your phone, but whatever.
The first part of the article is amazing in the protections that Apple puts in place to prevent people from brute forcing that. So I think that's the first really true accomplishment of this particular researcher, that, he was like, there's significant rate limiting. He's like, then I tried to randomizing my IP addresses, and that didn't even work. Like, Apple has technology to know that if it's coming from different IP addresses, it's still not going to do it. And he's like, they also know that if you're coming from a cloud provider and you're trying to brute force it and reset it, they know the cloud provider's IP addresses and are doing something different for that. So he eventually settled on finding cloud providers, because he needed 28,000 different IP addresses to be able to brute force in a reasonable amount of time, and found that on different cloud providers. And he doesn't go into details as to which ones he used or how he did that, right? So he's like, all right, now I'm able to perform that brute force attack against that. And he needs the person's phone number, their email, then he can brute force that PIN, and he can brute force that PIN that he can change the password rather, to your iCloud account. And then that's where it got kind of weird with me, because he talked about you need a passcode for your device to get into your device, and also you could have a second factor on your Apple ID, but that is the same system that he could also brute force. And he was kind of light on the details for that, even though the issue had been fixed, which I don't fault him for. Like, that's cool, dude. Like, you shouldn't really teach people how to do something specific like this that would be considered, potentially illegal, that people could abuse, right? So there's that kind of aspect. Apple kind of downplayed the impact of this vulnerability, and the researcher really thought that they should get the $100,000 bounty, and they were like, no, this is only valid when someone hasn't logged in for the first time or something like that, was kind of Apple's response. So therefore it's a very small amount of users. He was like, no, this affects all users. I can reset anyone's Apple ID, basically. And came down to that they were going to pay him like $16,000, and he was like, no, I don't want it, because that's just defeating the whole purpose. Like, I'm going to stick to my guns. I don't want your bounty. I should have gotten something more. This is a bigger issue, and therefore I'm going to publish my research. Even though he said I shouldn't, I'm still just going to publish it all and publish this article, and there you have it. And again, some of the nuanced details there are lost on me, but also I think he didn't go into some of the details, probably so that this maybe couldn't be easily replicated. Although, if Apple did fix the issue,
it was patched, but he didn't say whether it was patched on the phone or on their services or both. It was interesting how Apple started to respond in some of that back to some of their old practices with the Dave Maynard and Johnny Cash.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, nothing to report. No, it's only available in certain scenarios. No, it can't be done because we do this thing. And he verified that, they do this thing and it's breakable.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I apologize to our listeners. I really wanted to have a better description of how this worked, but...
Well, I wasn't as interested in the technical details. The article starts with they only were going to pay me $18,000, and I refused it. Here's why. And to summarize, his premise is I think not so much on the sophistication of the attack, although he does say he put a lot of time and effort into it, and he had to try a lot of different things. But he and Apple do not agree on the impact and what qualifies him for the bigger bug bounty. I think it's interesting from a couple different angles. One, the whole question that comes up often about security researchers and the potential for their activities to be prosecuted or and so on and so forth. I mean, he spent a lot of time hammering.
Yeah, even got into some crypto attacks too, and they have SSL pinning specific to the passcode validation, and gets into the SRP, secure remote password,
and PAKE,
a PAKE protocol. Right. So there's some crypto stuff in there.
So I guess one question I have is, and maybe it's time to get somebody, like Katie Moe on, but do you sort of, if you're going to go after a bug bounty for Apple, do you sort of kind of pre-register just to let them know, hey, I'm going to be, futzing around?
I think that's what gives you the permission on it. That would be that. Like, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not Katie Moe, but I would pre-register with one of those bug bounty providers, and then that opens up the permission, as opposed to, they have a bug bounty, but I'm not registered with, whatever bug bounty program they're doing, HackerOne or whatever. But I'll go attack their shit because it's public that they have a bug bounty and these are the things. And now I'm going to to me, that registration in that program is the part that gives you the permission, in my opinion.
Okay. And that's fair. The other aspect then is that essentially they've published this article because they have a beef with Apple, and they're arguing over the value of the work, and so they've put it out to the court of public opinion. How does that potentially impact bug bounty programs? Withstanding the merits of their claim, notwithstanding the merits of their claim, but how does this impact or potentially impact bug bounty programs if recipients, it's not like he wasn't given anything, which I'm sure there's plenty of people that don't get anything because for whatever reasons, but how is this policed? How is this who validates what Apple does? Is there any I'm sure they have internal bodies that make these decisions, but it just kind of makes you think about the future of bug bounty programs, and is there going to be any desired impact from this person publishing this? I doubt if Apple's going to cave and give them the $100,000.
350,000.
Yeah, but
will anything come from it?
Yeah, and I don't think it was about him complaining that he wasn't getting all the money so much, so he was really on the side of making sure people got what they deserved for the research that they accomplished. And I think he was trying to make a statement that I'm not going to take any money. I'm going to publish this article so that it's publicized out there that if you do the legitimate research and really prove that there is a certain level of impact, that Apple, maybe other companies, can make the decision that no, it's not that impact, and not pay it out. And that's a disservice to the security community
and the customers, and also
his name is Laxman Muthaya. If I pronounced that correctly, I apologize for
Well, I mean, to tie it into, now I wish Tom had stayed around, and he's the wrong kind of lawyer, though, but is there a civil case here? Is there something where he or anybody could approach a company like Apple that does sort of publish the broad guidelines of, what the bug bounty amounts for? Yeah. Is there a way for him to prosecute this as, hey, is this a contract? Is there an implied contract, especially if he's registered?
I agree, Jeff. I think it's more like an employee, compensation kind of thing, right? Like I don't think these aren't criminal laws, right? These are civil laws to say that
would be civil.
Yeah, that I do perform a certain service and want to be compensated in a certain way, and the company has not compensated me in that way. And I think your point, Jeff, which I really like, is what's the governing body?
Yeah, there is
to
none.
say like making sure that people are compensated correctly when we're putting in the context of bug bounties.
Yep. And that's where I think the current, in my opinion, and from what I understand about the current state of bug bounties, is that there is no mediating body. Like if you find a problem with a Cisco product, you submit it to
unless it's Bugcrowd or HackerOne, which they would be the governing body, Larry.
But do they actually govern? Like you submit, Apple goes to HackerOne. You submit a bug to HackerOne, and they provide the mediation. Hey, they found this thing. Oh yeah, we found this thing. But then Apple says, yeah, no, it doesn't meet the requirements for this. But the bug finder says, no, it really does. Who's the one that says, hey guys, you need to figure this out?
How much does HackerOne and Bugcrowd go to bat for the research?
I guess
they don't. And Apple's the one that says.
I think what we're fishing for. I'm sorry, just real quickly.
Yeah.
I think we're looking for. Is there such a thing as arbitration?
Yeah,
there is not, to my understanding. And
Casey, if you're listening, you need to come on the show, and this is one of the things we want to talk with you about.
Casey
Ellis.
Okay.
Casey Ellis. Yeah, founder of Bugcrowd.
Katie Masaris and. Yeah,
Katie has worked for HackerOne and set up Microsoft's bug bounty program.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
would be another authority on the subject.
And from
Love Katie,
and
Casey,
yes,
Katie and Casey.
From my experience, the final arbiter was the company that had the bug bounty program.
It was Apple. In this case, you're right.
Yep.
Apple's
and
like,
my experience
like, no,
too.
like piss off. Like this
I-
is our decision and it's final and there's no recourse.
Yep, like I found an issue with Slack. You do something on Slack many years ago, and it wouldn't perform the action. And you get an error back that revealed the user's internal UUID, their unique string for their user, which was never referenced anywhere else in any of the documentation that I could find. So I submitted it as a bug, and to one of the bug bounty programs for Slack, and it wasn't going to be anything crazy. I think it was going to be like a free T-shirt, or something ridiculous like that.
It's amazing how you can get a free T-shirt or $350,000 or anything in between. Yeah.
So I submitted it, and they came back and said, "Yeah, nope, this isn't a problem," and then they patched it.
They didn't even get a free T-shirt.
I didn't get a free T-shirt. It was like, no, this isn't a problem. This isn't anything secret. Like,
Well, I know someone that works at Slack. So, what size do you want?
extra large.
Well, hold on. We just don't want any T-shirt.
No.
We want like a bug bounty T-shirt,
We
right?
want
Like,
the
you
well,
got to have a badge of pride, right? Yeah.
Let me see what I can do.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. But that to my point being is that there's no real arbitration. There's no mediation. It's the company that signed the bug bounty program said, "Yep, no, it's a bug or not." Kind of like Kevin Finisterre and DJI. Same thing. DJI, they submitted things to DJI and they said, "Yeah, we're totally gonna." Yeah, no, it's not. It's not a problem. Nope, sorry, no money.
Well, and all I will say is, and I'm certainly not an expert, if bug bounty is sort of the preferred method, that keeps everybody, within the swim lanes, and it's how we as a community are distinguishing ourselves between, good and bad, ethical and unethical, and so on and so forth. Maybe there should be more regard given to standardization of the bug bounties, or guidelines, or something, or an opportunity for arbitration, which it sounds like HackerOne does to some degree, but not really if it's the vendor or company that has the ultimate say. Just food for thought. I thought it was an interesting thing to just kind of ponder.
But I think HackerOne and Bugcrowd are in an interesting situation, as I would imagine they take money from the
HackerOne
vendor,
gets, I think, a percentage,
right? So in that case, like, Apple is the customer to a Bugcrowd or HackerOne, which makes it difficult to be an arbitrator and not be biased in any way. Right, and I'm not saying they are. I mean, I'm sure they want to be fair to everyone, but at the end of the day, they're also in that kind of situation where yes, they're also a customer, and our security researchers are also part of this process that they have to support as well. Puts them in an interesting situation. It would be interesting to have some, Jeff, to your point, right, path to arbitration, and have a mediator that does not have a vested interest in either the security researcher, the vendor, or the bug bounty company, right?
Right, and but then you would need some sort of guideline or standard as to what's the Apple things were unauthorized iCloud account access, broad unauthorized control of an iCloud account, $100,000. What does that mean? As opposed to the $25,000 limited unauthorized control, and I mean, Tom was talking about, the Supreme Court Justice, what's her name,
Barrett,
writing a whole paper on the word. So
yes,
let's have her take a run at the word limited versus broad.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's a good point.
So anyway, I mean, like I said, I just, it's one of those interesting things that you kind of, when you're drinking whiskey, you start to think about.
Larry,
I'm also thinking it's late.
Yeah, I was going to say, Larry, any of your stories, or Larry or Lee, before we close it out?
Yeah, no, I think. Oh, yes.
One more.
Creepier COVID tracking.
Yeah.
Mass Notify, the COVID tracking app from Massachusetts, apparently was when you had COVID tracking stuff turned on your Android phone. Even though the Android stuff would already do it, that the Mass Notify application was pushed to the Android devices without any interaction from the user.
Correct. And you couldn't go find the Mass Notify app and uninstall it. You had to go through another process to remove what had been installed. But yeah, it was there. It was pushed. Now, one of the questions is this was being pushed by the Massachusetts Health Authority.
Yep.
As opposed to the cellular provider, and that shouldn't that sort of tracking really be in the health position? In other words, shouldn't that be their job and not Google and Apple's job? Which is an interesting philosophical question, although I'm more on I'm not so cool with the creepy just slip it in there without my permission thing. That felt really creepy.
No comment.
Yeah, my girlfriend in college said the same thing. Wait, no. That's a joke. That's a joke.
That restraining order still in place, Larry?
No. No.
Should be.
No. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of creepy, that even though the base operating system had all the functions, that there was something that slid in there and that it was automatically installed. There was no way to find out that it was installed unless you visited the Google Play Store and it already said installed. So, and
permission is the thing.
It is.
Now, in transparent, I mean, really what these things come down to, permission, transparency, and opt-in, right? We talked about that with the thermostat story as well. And I think that's a theme that we, certainly carried over in the many years of doing the show, right? That we want the ability to know what you want to do and either accept or deny that ability. And that when you try and circumvent that process when it comes to software, that's where the issues begin and can get really, really tricky.
And one of the other questions here was, right from the article, did Google roll this out to every Massachusetts device? And the question is, well, it says it's installed on it's been installed in more than 1 million times and less than 5 million, which Massachusetts only has 6.8 million residents. If you figure 50% of them have iPhones and 50% of them have Android devices, that kind of meets that 1 million, because the next one, a 5 million plus thing. So that kind of makes sense. So did they push it to every resident of Massachusetts Android's device? And how did they know they were a Massachusetts resident?
That's the other question.
Crazy.
I mean, I suppose if you're a provider and you get your bill in Massachusetts, but what's to say I don't get my bill in Massachusetts and I live in Florida?
Well,
I did want to just spend a couple of minutes, anywhere at the end of the show, but I want to spend a couple of minutes. I want to talk about episode 95 of Darknet Diaries.
okay.
It was one of my favorite podcast episodes that I listened to recently. And I finished listening to one of my audiobooks, and I started getting caught up on Darknet Diaries. And I listened to this episode. It's called John and Brian's Big Adventure. Many of us have heard, and even on this show, we've talked about our adventures in pen testing, right? And it's awesome content, but oftentimes, like, you know, you've done one pen test and the next one can seem kind of similar. We've done one physical assessment, and it you know, the story's kind of similar for the next one. And you know, when they start on this whole journey, I'm like, okay, like, you know, it's a physical pen test kind of thing. But it really was an adventure in a really entertaining and educational story. I really want to go into the details, but I also don't want to give you any spoilers, because you should really listen to this episode like not knowing all of the details that happened during this episode, because it was so engaging that I like volunteered to go pick my kids up at various activities, because I'm like, no, I'm listening to this podcast episode and I gotta see how this ends.
Nice.
And therefore I want to go pick the kids up, so they're like on the way while I left like a little early to pick my kid up from wrestling to go, like, I want to see how this story ends. That's how engaged I was with this episode. And that doesn't always happen with a lot of podcast episodes. So episode 95, John and Brian's Big Adventure. If you thought you've heard like all the pen tester stories that you could stomach and they're all the same, this one has twists and turns that will kept me engaged and was really entertaining and fun.
Oh,
Nice.
I will leave it at that.
Cool.
And after we close the show, I'll tell you some of the details, because I can't not talk about them. So,
Fair enough.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and get the heck out of here.